Greetings everyone and welcome to your pre-Gamescom BlastCast. I am Jarvis and with me as always is my bastion of common sense, Lightning Dragon. To give you a quick production schedule update here, it looks like there's 77 bugs still to be fixed and 12 blockers that will keep them from sending it to Evocati yet, as according to the latest production schedule update. This week in Around the Verse, they mostly covered the structures on the planets again and how they all work. And honestly, we kind of seen this several times now. It was just kind of a longer, more in-depth, detailed version of things we've already seen. They're kind of holding all their cards back for the Gamescom. There's no doubt about it. That's kind of always goes this time of year, so we're going to kind of skip past that. If it interests you, give it a watch, but it's nothing there that we haven't talked about before.
Hey, Jarvis, guess what?
What?
There are going to be planets, and there's going to be buildings on those planets.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Hold on. I gotta
start the entire thing all over again. This is the biggest, most epic news ever.
Yeah, I'm going to need to tweet this out. No, we're good. So, but basically, I wanted to dig into just a little bit more of the flight model. Last week we talked about the thrusters, how basically the values were faked, and that was a real fun video to do. And there's a lot of different ways you can change flight, and I was discussing one of the ways that the Alien War had covered in that document that we showed, at least linked in the last BlastCast, and how this would affect the three core flight styles. See, there's three basic flight styles that can coexist with one another in Star Citizen if they do it correctly. The up-close knife fighting, that's kind of like where people like the very close, quick moving strafing mechanics that you found in Star Citizen.
First-person shooter mechanics.
Well, 1.3. Well, it depends. If some ships you can see it, like for example the Cartual, and that's one ship where that would actually be a viable mechanic. Then you have your turn and chase classical dogfighting, which is like your Diaspora or your Elite Dangerous, and that's for ships that kind of fall in the center of the road. They can do some maneuvering, and they have pretty strong mains. And then you have your asteroid style main thruster centric fighting, your boom and zoom kind of style. And all three of these can exist in Star Citizen if you actually set up your engines, your thrusters, everything in a certain way to differentiate in ships. So what I've done here is I spent some time kind of putting together a short little video. I'll go ahead and drop it in here in just a moment to kind of let you see just a general idea of how this will work. And of course there's many ways that they can make it work like this, but this is just one example. And I'll let you watch that now. In this example, the first thing we're going to look at is a chart provided by Alien War. As you can see, he's laid out ships based on different characteristics. Going bottom to top shifts from MAV-centric to main-centric focus on flight. Going from left to right moves from fast maneuvering, high rotations, to slower maneuvering, slower rotation speeds. Here, I'm going to use two ships on the opposite side of the spectrum to demonstrate differences in flight while still retaining current flight mechanics and introducing new ones. It is important to define some ground rules on how this functions. First of all, ships that are more MAV-centric have faster normal accelerations, but less top velocity and less mains afterburner capability in both fuel and acceleration. Main-centric ships have more fuel and top mains afterburner velocity / acceleration depending on how high they are up on this chart. They have lower standard acceleration values though. Personally, I would rather see Star Citizen implement a heat mechanic for afterburner as opposed to fuel. Heat could accumulate or even allow pilots to push past safety limits, potentially damaging engines and MAVs if needed in a pinch. If afterburner fuel is the final mechanic, regulating this fuel will mean life or death for ships such as a Vanguard against faster, more maneuverable MAV-focused ships, as they will have no way to extend to keep them at distance. Now, we need to define how powerful MAVs are. The Cartual is set to 100% power for MAVs, being that it's all MAVs. The Vanguard would be about 20% acceleration rate of mains to MAVs, just as an example number. This means that the MAVs can only accelerate at a maximum of 20% of the mains power at most. MAVs would always have a 10% value minimum of the main engine, always creating a 100/10 ratio at full throttle, allowing minimum maneuvering at any speed. To reach max MAV power, the Vanguard will have to throttle down to 90% to shunt another 10% to the MAVs. Of course, the car to all is always 0 to 100 as a ratio due to it just having MAVs. The lateral strafing of the car to all would always be around 50 to 60% because half the engines are involved, but no direct throttle manipulation is needed to reach max potential. What this ratio means is that, for example, the Vanguard can only accelerate at a rate equal to an average 20% of the forward acceleration by means of strafing with the MAVs. Modifications to the MAV system could increase this. So if it takes 10 seconds to reach max speed by mains, the MAVs would take 50 seconds. This is just a quick example figure, but acceleration rates need to come down a bit to create a more feeling of flying a vehicle and not just a power suit. Different ships would need to shunt different levels of power depending on the max MAV to mains ratio available. For example, let's say the Hornet here in the middle of the chart, and we're going to go ahead and give it number value of 100 to 47, meaning that to get max maneuvering from the MAVs, the Hornet would need to reduce the throttle to at least 63%, in order to shunt the additional 37% power needed to cap out the MAVs from the default 10% at full throttle. So how would the car to all and the Vanguard interact in a fight? Well, that depends on many factors such as distance, speed, and environment. The optimal way for the car to all to fight in open space is to keep as close as possible, or, if unable to stay close, to use the ability of rapid vector changes, including strafing, to stay away from incoming fire. The closer the car to all is to the Vanguard, the more advantage swings to the car to all. The Vanguard will find the best way to fight a car to all in open space is speed and distance. Using its speed, it will try to maintain as much distance as possible using decoupled fighting techniques. It will fly in fast and make sweeping patterns of attack, much like boom and zoom fighters of old. The more the Vanguard can keep its distance from the car to all, the better chance it has of victory, due to higher defenses and greater firepower. Slower rotational speed is largely negated by distance, and dodging incoming fire is easier with more time to react. As the differences in ships begin to narrow, it still creates a situation where each ship has a strategy that is better depending upon what they are facing. The strategy can change depending upon where the opposing ship lies on the spectrum of ships. For example, if the Hornet was to go against the car to all, it would want to keep as much distance as possible and use tactics more similar to that of the Vanguard. But if it is facing a Vanguard, it would want to close distance as much as possible, but take advantage of superior maneuverability like the car to all would. These changes would break up the homogeneous nature of combat. Now add in things like environmental factors. A very maneuverable ship in an asteroid field fighting against a less maneuverable ship would want to try to stay as close to obstacles and objects, allowing greater defense, while the faster, less maneuverable ship would want to take careful, long sweeping attacks to avoid running into obstacles and setting up attack run on the target. In group dynamics, different kinds of ships in a squad will create a whole new level of synergy, allowing for advanced tactics we have not seen much of so far. I hope this explains a bit just one example of how flight can be changed just a little bit in order to create a different environment, a different flight model, and introduce the game to a bit more variety into the combat. Of course, any changes like this would be completely pointless without addressing the other half of the equation, which of course is gunnery. Alright, now there's one thing I do want to clarify. The reason the Vanguard, for example, only has a 20% acceleration cap and only needs to shunt 10% of the power to the thrusters in this example is twofold. The ship's mass and thruster limits together mean there's only so much performance that can be achieved. And the ship's main engines are so powerful that it takes little off the mains to fill the power of the MAVs. So the Vanguard is, in this example, is more your asteroid style boom and zoom. And as you saw, or at least heard when I was discussing with the Hornet kind of falls, even on the chart, dead middle of everything, where it can apply tactics in either direction depending upon what it's facing. Now, while I would like to see speed caps be universal, that everyone can say, let's say they set the speed cap at 1,000, that everyone can get there just over time by standard acceleration or by using an afterburner mechanic to get there faster, CIG seems pretty set on each ship having its own individual speed cap, which would work fine too, but
there's only one problem with that. When you get a ship that has a ridiculous top speed and a good enough acceleration, you dictate 100% terms of the fight. If you don't want to fight, you won't fight. If you do want to fight, you cannot do anything besides fancy maneuvering against that, because he dictates every single term of engagement.
That's true. But to be honest with you, I played quite a few flight games, including World War II ones, where that happens all the time.
But the thing is, the World War II's mechanics are vastly different than space.
True.
The guy, have you ever been trying to chase down a BF-109, for example? And
that's what I'm saying. I was thinking the BF-109 coming after you.
The BF-109 is flying backwards using long-range sniper rifles to hit you.
Well, what I was actually thinking, what you're talking about, how they control the engagement. When you've got a BF-109 up there, and you're in a turn fighter that doesn't have the same top speed, he's in control of that engagement. He goes up, he gets away, he keeps that speed, and he just hovers over you like a vulture, waiting for that moment to pounce. And in that regards, like a BF-109 is very much in control of the situation. So the idea doesn't really bother me as much, because, as he said, he wanted to have a kind of a World War II in space. So in that regards, that particular kind of mechanic does fall within that purview. But I totally get what you're saying too at the same time. There's sometimes
it's the same side of the coin,
right?
Really.
Well, it comes down to, if you can't engage or can't disengage through running away normally, you're just got to dodge until basically your quantum drive kicks off so you can escape. But I guess it kind of comes down to choosing the right tool for the job too. If you're going to be going into an asteroid field, you want a more maneuverable ship than something maybe that has a lot more top speed and less maneuverability. And that would also affect maybe the kind of ships you encounter and how you deal with them. Because if they had a fast ship and you were in an asteroid field, you could ditch them just by the ability to move around the obstacles really quickly and just kind of lose them in the mess. Given if the sensors are advanced enough that you can do that.
To not take this too far out of the scope, though, this is only in regards to fighters. It absolutely doesn't apply to any of the large ships. So if you're let's say you're in a Hull C, and you're up against someone who's got more maneuverability than you, higher top speed than you, and it was a short run, so you don't have any escort, all you have is your defenses. Now, let's say your defenses are enough to hold him out for a while. He basically can do anything he wants to you at leisure, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's where my thing comes in, and maybe it won't be a problem. It might not be.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it comes out, because, as I said, I'm not against the idea of a universal speed cap. In fact, I think in a lot of regards that would be better. But I'm just kind of working somewhat within the systems that they've talked about. Yeah. And but this is just, as I said, this is just one example. And these numbers I threw up for the values, they're arbitrary. They're not. I didn't sit down with a calculator and figure it all out. I'm just saying this is faster than this in this way. This is weaker than this in this way. And those numbers were just for raw comparisons. They could be higher. They could be lower. So don't take them too literally. They're just kind of what they are. And, there's a lot of changes that have to come. But as I stated, you can't make any changes until you address the other half of the equation, and that's gunnery. I got into a long discussion with someone in a chat. I won't give out names or anything like that, but we were talking about all these different mechanics and things, and I basically had stated that, in the end, it says, well, you can't change this and this. He says, you can't change this and this because I am. And I says, exactly. I said, you can't change any of this stuff because he kept going back to the pinpoint accuracy and how I am would just dominate if you did this and this. I said, so that kind of should be a red flag, don't you think? That one mechanic is dictating what you can and can't do with the flight model. So it was kind of interesting discussion. I've been enjoying it. So you know who you are. So keep up the interesting conversation. I'm enjoying it. But anyway, so leave your ideas down below. This is a very complex topic. I don't have all the answers, and this answer isn't even the perfect one. It's just an answer. And maybe you have something out there that's way better. I'd like to hear it. If it's even better, I'd love to look at it and adopt it even. I'm just looking for the best possible scenario where all the ships don't basically just turn, spin, and shoot at each other. Because it's really boring. and it's really kind of lame. And there's other ways to do this that add a little bit of depth, because I can't see a game where I just spin all the ships and point at the other guy until they're dead, holding my interest past a few weeks, let alone years.
Why didn't they keep making new Call of Duty games over and over and over?
Right, because they don't hold the interest. And like for example, was it Arma that makes a game like every 10 years or something like that, or 5 to 10 years, and they keep the same player base throughout all the iterations. They in fact it grows slightly. So maybe they're not as big, but they don't lose their players. They keep pulling in more. And the games are still, people are still playing Arma 2. There's some people out there still playing the original Arma. There's people out there playing Arma 3, but they're still playing any iteration of Arma, and no matter how old the game is, and they love it. Alright guys, we'll leave comments as I said down below. Next week we probably won't be covering anything related to flight or flight mechanics, because it's going to be Gamescom, and there's going to be
You're welcome.
You're welcome. There's going to be way too much to talk about, and I just kind of want to take this slow time to kind of cover some of these things a little bit, and I just want the game to be as good as it can be. I want it to be as much fun for everybody as it can be, and I want everyone to find that, be able to play it the play style that they want and have it mesh.
And not be forced to do something you don't want to do.
Exactly. Alright guys, catch you later.
Bye-bye.